You don't walk into rooms anymore. You invade them. The shift is instant, like pressure dropping before a storm. Conversations crack and stall in midair. Smiles stiffen. Laughter sounds wrong, thin, nervous. You don't say anything, yet something in your presence feels loud, predatory, slow burning. They call it a bad feeling. They joke about your energy. They invent reasons to step away from you. But deep down, they know the truth. Their instincts recognize you before their minds do. Their demons sense a predator in the dark long before their lips can form words. There was a time you begged for warmth, a time when you wanted to belong. You stayed quiet to make them comfortable, softened your edges to avoid standing out, swallowed your thoughts so you wouldn't be labeled dangerous. You watched them laugh without you, whisper about you, test your loyalty with silence and side eyes. You felt the betrayal long before it showed on their faces. They smiled while breaking you in quiet, surgical ways. They cheered when you were weak. They felt safe when you were small. That was the balance. That was the agreement. You be harmless. They stay comfortable. Now the agreement is broken. Now your silence feels heavier than their words. Your stillness feels like a warning sign. You don't chase approval anymore. You don't explain yourself. You don't shrink to fit in corners that were built to suffocate you. You learned the geometry of pain. You memorized the architecture of isolation. Every rejection carved another layer of control into your spine. Every betrayal sharpened your eyes. Every lonely night trained your mind like a battlefield general, mapping exits, counting threats, calculating survival with cold, precise clarity. They start sensing it before you make eye contact, a subtle tightening in their chest, a crawling sensation under their skin. Their jokes die halfway through. Their posture shifts, defensive without knowing why. You don't raise your voice. You don't threaten. You don't perform. You just stand there calm and unreadable, like an ancient symbol carved into stone that was never meant to be understood by the weak. They feel exposed, not because you see them, but because they see themselves when they look at you. You weren't born with it. You were forced into it. Pain pressed it into your bones. Betrayal etched it into your breathing. Loneliness tempered it like steel submerged in cold water. Where you once bled openly, you now seal wounds in silence. Where you once broke in public, you now fracture in private and rebuild in the dark. You don't seek chaos. Chaos senses you. You don't announce power. Power hums under your skin, quiet, controlled, dangerous, and that bad feeling they get. It isn't fear of what you've done. It isn't fear of what you might do. It's fear of what you've survived. It's the panic of their inner weaknesses, realizing they can't hide around you anymore. It's their demons recognizing a rival presence they were never prepared to face. Silence becomes heavy around you, not peaceful, but predatory, like a forest that has stopped breathing. You feel it in the way eyes slide away from your face, in the way laughter stiffens and dies when you step closer. Before, you were loud open, softened by the need to belong. Now you move through rooms like a question no one wants to answer. People feel exposed without knowing why. They call it a bad feeling, but what it really is recognition. Something in you no longer matches the safety of their masks, and that difference unsettles the air long before you ever speak. You start to notice the small betrayals, messages left unanswered, doors that once opened now close quietly, smiles that don't reach the eyes. The warmth that used to welcome you turns cold, calculating. In the past, you searched yourself for flaws, convinced that you were the problem, that your presence carried some invisible defect. You tried to file down your edges. You tried to speak softer, laugh simpler, think smaller. That version of you was welcome, because it was harmless. It could be controlled. It could be ignored when necessary. But you are not that anymore, and they feel it before you do. You were once predictable. Easy to place, easy to name. Now you make people measure their words. Now you make them hesitate. That hesitation frightens them. Darkness isn't just around you, it grows inside you. Not the darkness of evil, but the darkness of awareness. A slow, ancient awakening, like a symbol carved into stone long before you were born, finally starting to glow. You begin to understand that their discomfort isn't random, it's strategic. People who live comfortably inside their lies feel threatened by those who have survived collapse. You stop mistaking isolation for rejection. You begin to see it as quarantine. Predators do not move in packs. They move alone, quietly, watching, measuring, waiting. You stop explaining your silence. You stop defending your distance. You start treating your mind like a territory that must be protected, guarded, controlled by no one but yourself. Your mind hardens in ways no one notices. Where there was once noise, now there is strategy. Where there was once emotion, now there is calculation. You feel the shift in your body, in the tension of your jaw, in the stillness of your eyes. You are not louder. You are not softer. You are sharper. They feel it. They sense your silence like a blade resting against their nerves. In the streets of their minds, alarms begin to ring. They do not fear you. They fear what stands in them when you are near, and they have never learned how to fight it, control it, or survive it when it finally wakes up. Something inside you cracks the night. You stop asking why the room feels colder when you enter. For years you blamed yourself, your tone, your stare, your silence. You thought you were broken glass, cutting people just by existing. But in that quiet moment alone, you finally see it clearly. The discomfort in their eyes was never confusion. It was recognition. They saw a reflection of everything they tried to bury. You were walking evidence that escape was possible. Not loud, not arrogant, just awake. Before this moment, you chased warmth, softened your edges, betrayed your instincts to make others comfortable. You let them rewrite your instincts, teach you to doubt the sharpness in your mind, convince you that restraint was weakness. You became smaller, quieter, easier to digest, and in doing so, you almost erased yourself. Now the truth steps out of shadow, heavy, ancient, uncomfortable. You realize they were never disturbed by your presence. They were disturbed by the part of themselves that died while you survived. Every smirk that felt forced, every handshake that lingered too long, every betrayal wrapped in friendly language was a test you were never meant to pass peacefully. They wanted you tame, predictable, manageable. But something old lives in your bones, a survival code written long before comfort, before excuses, before safety. You stop apologizing to walls that were built to cage you. You stop explaining hunger to people who only understand decay. The moment arrives silently, like a blade slipping from its sheath. You don't announce your awakening. You feel it spreading through your thoughts, slow as poison, clean as truth. Fear stops being something you run from. Fear becomes something you study. You begin to see symbols everywhere, not mystical, but psychological. Predators recognize predators. Sleepers feel exposed near the awake. Their demons, the ones fed by laziness, entitlement, and cowardice, start to bruise in your presence. Before, you moved through life asking permission. Now you move like a silent war. Your silence is no longer empty. It is calculated. It is strategic. It is dangerous. You no longer crave acceptance because you understand the price was your spine. You no longer seek approval because you see how fragile their approval system always was. Betrayal stops hurting. It starts instructing. You study every slight, every whisper, every subtle attempt to undermine you like ancient battle maps. You learn where they stand without asking. You learn who smiles with poison behind their teeth. And in this quiet, surgical shift, you become something else. Not loud, not chaotic, not reckless. You become controlled. You become unreadable. You become the kind of presence that makes liars nervous and cowards restless. This is the spark, not fire in the sky, but fire under skin. A quiet ignition that cannot be turned off. The moment you stop fighting yourself and start preparing for what they never wanted you to become. And from that second forward, you are no longer camouflage. You are a warning now. The climb doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly, like a tightening of the air around your lungs, a pressure running through your bone. Before, you were watched with pity. Before, you tried to explain yourself. Now you move without permission. You wake before the world breathes, not because of motivation, but because something older than comfort has taken residence inside you. You stop waiting for approval. You stop searching for rescue. Silence becomes your training ground, and loneliness becomes your mentor. Where you once felt chaos, you now feel precision. Every movement controlled, every emotion sharpened into something useful. You remember the faces of those who smiled while doubting you, the ones who listened but never believed, the soft betrayals, the quiet sabotage, the way they studied you, not to understand but to measure how easy it would be to replace you. That memory doesn't weaken you, it seals you. You carry it like a hidden blade wrapped in cloth. You train in places where no one claps, in rooms that echo your breathing, in moments where your mind tries to drag you back to comfort, and you drag it forward by force. Discipline starts to feel sacred, like an ancient ritual passed down through blood rather than words. You stop being loud. You stop announcing. You start observing, strategizing, adapting. Where you once reacted, you now calculate. Weakness shows itself in patience. Strength shows itself in restraint. You feel your presence changing even when you say nothing. Your steps become heavier, your gaze colder, your stillness louder than screams. You are no longer trying to prove you are dangerous. You are becoming something that does not need to prove anything. The world hasn't noticed yet, but it will. It always does. There is a strange comfort in this phase, a calm that doesn't feel safe but feels necessary. You cut away habits like dead skin. You abandon people who knew your old shape. You stop chasing connection and start respecting energy. You study how predators move, not with anger, but with clarity. You realize survival isn't about noise, it's about timing, about silence, about the ability to wait without losing yourself. The climb hurts, but the pain feels intelligent. It teaches instead of destroys. It scars instead of softens. Your mind becomes a battlefield you finally control. Intrusive thoughts no longer rule. Doubt becomes background noise. The weakness that once whispered to you begins to choke on your discipline. You don't celebrate small wins. You don't announce progress. You just stack evidence inside yourself like a hidden archive of power. Every sacrifice makes you narrower, more focused, more impossible to manipulate. You are not rising loudly. You are sharpening silently. And in this silent sharpening, something ancient awakens inside you. Not rage, not ego, something colder, something strategic. Something that understands that true power doesn't climb with noise. It moves like a shadow that cannot be caught, but can never be escaped. You feel it long before they say anything. The same rooms that once ignored you now grow tight when your footsteps cross the floor, and the air changes as if some invisible creature has lifted its head. Before, you were noise, unstable, easy to overlook. Now your silence is a warning. Eyes follow you without permission. Smiles arrive late and leave early. They sense the shift in your spine. The discipline behind your breathing, the quiet structure built from nights when no one came to save you. You don't beg to be seen anymore. You don't soften your voice or round your edges. You move through spaces like a sealed message, and the people who used to measure you now feel measured themselves. You start noticing the cracks in the faces of those who once smiled too confidently beside you. They were never allies, only observers waiting for proof that you would fail like them. They spoke softly about you when you weren't there, shaping small betrayals into harmless jokes. Before you swallowed it, you adjusted. You tried to stay acceptable. Now you understand their fear was never about your mistakes. It was about your potential to leave their small world behind. Something ancient activates inside you, not loud, not wild, but cold and deliberate, like a symbol carved into stone and hidden beneath a temple. Your thoughts sharpen. Your emotions retreat into controlled chambers. Where you once reacted, you calculate. Where you once explained, you observe. You see how power actually works in silence, in stillness, in unreadable eyes that give nothing away. You no longer chase approval. You let them chase air while you build structure. And that is when the breakthrough becomes visible even to those who try to look away. Your presence stops being loud and starts feeling final, like the last move in a game no one realized they were playing. Before, chaos lived inside your chest. Doubt shook your hands. Fear controlled the tempo of your life. Now there is order, calm, precision. You walk slower because you see further. You speak less because you hear everything. People begin to feel exposed around you, as if the masks they built for years are starting to crack under a gaze that doesn't blink. They call it a bad feeling because they don't have the language for spiritual pressure, for psychological dominance, for the uncomfortable truth that they are standing next to someone who no longer needs them. You become a symbol without trying, not through words, but through energy. A scar, a stare, a silence that carries the weight of battles no one witnessed. Their demons feel it first. They always do. They whisper to them at night, warning them that you are no longer part of the predictable world. You are not chasing success. You are becoming something they cannot study, cannot control, and cannot escape. This is the moment when the storm inside you no longer destroys. It guards. It calculates. It chooses. You move through rooms now and the air folds around you, like it knows you're carrying something it cannot survive. Before, you were the one watching corners, calculating exits, measuring everyone's smiles for hidden blades. Before, Your pulse raced at the sound of footsteps behind you. Now, you don't flinch, you don't adjust, you don't apologize for the weight of your presence. People feel it in their throats first, then in their hands, then in their bones. The silence that follows you isn't empty. It's thick. It's alert. It knows you are no longer someone who can be controlled. You've learned what betrayal really looks like. Not the loud kind, not the dramatic kind, but the soft kind. The kind that hides in laughter. The kind that sits beside you and studies your weaknesses like an architect studying cracks in a bridge. You remember the way they looked at you when you were fragile, when you were bleeding quietly, when your eyes asked for mercy without your mouth ever opening. They thought you were easy. They thought you were soft. They thought you were predictable. But something ancient inside you was taking notes. Something old and patient was waiting. Now your eyes don't search a room. They scan it. They measure it. You don't speak to be heard. You speak to test loyalty. You don't move with urgency. You move with intention. Your presence no longer asks permission. It announces consequences without saying a word. Where chaos used to live inside your chest, discipline now stands like a monument carved from bone and will. You don't feel loud. You feel centered. A calm that doesn't beg to be understood. A calm that warns without explaining. There is a quiet fear in the way they look at you now. Not the fear of violence, the fear of exposure. Because you see things they're still hiding from themselves. You see hesitation before it becomes a lie. You see weakness before it asks for help. Your silence feels like a threat, not because it's aggressive, but because it's deliberate. You are no longer trying to be accepted. You are no longer offering your energy for approval. You've built something colder, something sharper, something that survives without noise. Your mind is no longer a battlefield. It's a command center. Every thought is a soldier. Every emotion is trained. Every reaction is earned. You don't bleed in public anymore. You don't break in front of witnesses. The pain that once scattered you has been forged into a weapon you carry with precision. They feel it when you pass by. They feel it when your shadow touches their world. And they know, without explanation, that the person they once underestimated does not exist anymore. You were never meant to be understood, and that truth no longer stings. Before, you walked quietly through rooms hoping for permission to exist, shrinking your thoughts, dulling your instincts, offering pieces of yourself to people who only knew how to tear. You mistook their smiles for loyalty. You mistook their proximity for safety. Now you see it clearly. Every laugh that came too late. Every silence that came too fast. Every hand that touched your back only to measure where they would place the knife. You stopped bleeding out loud. You stopped asking why. You started watching. There was a time when you feared your own mind, when your thoughts felt like a storm you didn't know how to command. You doubted your instincts. You softened your footsteps. You apologized for the way your presence shifted the air. Now your silence is not weakness. It is a weapon. Your stillness is not fear. It is calculation. You speak less because you see more. You move slower because you understand the trap of speed. Chaos used to shake your bones. Now you make it flinch in your presence. They feel it, always. The unease in their stomachs, the pressure behind their eyes when you walk past. They call it a bad feeling. They call it tension. They call it darkness. But it is their own reflection rising up and showing them everything they buried. You are no longer a man trying to survive among wolves. You are the quiet force that stands among them, untouched, unreadable, carrying the cold certainty of someone who has already died 1,000 silent deaths and returned without asking permission. Your scars are no longer wounds. They are symbols, marks carved by pain but polished by control. Each betrayal taught you something sacred. Trust is earned in silence, not promises. Loyalty is proven in actions that cost blood, not words whispered in comfort. You stopped giving parts of yourself away to be loved. You started guarding your core like an ancient gate that only opens for those who can survive the silence of your mind. Before, you tried to fit into their world, bending edges, rounding corners, pretending to be something safe. Now your presence feels like a closed door in a burning hallway. People look at you and feel exposed, not because you speak, but because you don't. You don't explain, you don't chase, you don't react. You observe, you remember, you wait. Your power is not loud. It moves through shadows. It breathes slowly. It strikes only when necessary. and the truth settles in like a buried prophecy, finally unearthed. The bad feeling they get around you isn't fear of who you are. It's terror of who they were when they realize you survived what broke them.